They called me a hero, until someone rewatched the footage. Back then, I worked in a small supermarket on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the linoleum floors had seen better days. I kept to myself, stocking shelves and avoiding unnecessary conversations. My apartment was a modest one-bedroom above a laundromat, and I rarely interacted with my neighbors. My phone would ring occasionally, mostly my sister checking in, but I'd often let it go to voicemail. I told myself it was better this way, that keeping my distance was safer for everyone involved. One afternoon, a woman started frequenting the store with her young son. The boy couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, with a mop of curly hair and an infectious smile. He'd always wave at me, and over time, I found myself looking forward to their visits. It was a dangerous feeling, attachment, but I couldn't help it. I remembered my own childhood, the absence of a protective figure, the constant sense of vulnerability. Maybe that's why I felt a pull toward the kid. I wanted to be the kind of person who could shield someone from harm, even if I couldn't rewrite my own past. Then came the day everything changed. It was a typical weekday, the store bustling with the usual after-work crowd. I was in the back, organizing inventory, when I heard the unmistakable sound of chaos. Shouting, a scream, the crash of something heavy hitting the floor. Instinct took over. I rushed to the front and saw 2 figures in hoodies, faces obscured, causing mayhem. One of them had grabbed the little boy, holding him tightly as his mother screamed in terror. Without thinking, I lunged at the man, tackling him to the ground. We struggled, but I managed to wrest the boy free and push him toward his mother. The assailants fled, and the store fell into a stunned silence. Someone called the police, and soon the place was swarming with officers and reporters. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust in my face, and before I knew it, my photo was plastered across local news outlets with headlines proclaiming me a hero. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt exposed, vulnerable. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the glow of the television casting shadows on the walls. They replayed the security footage over and over, analyzing every move, every expression. And then, someone noticed something. A fleeting moment where one of the attackers seemed to recognize me. A brief exchange of glances that hinted at a deeper connection. Questions started to arise. Who was I? Why did the assailant look at me that way? The narrative began to shift, and the pedestal they had placed me on started to crumble. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth surfaced, before my carefully constructed facade unraveled. The past has a way of catching up, no matter how fast or far you run. They started calling me that guy from the news before I even made it back to work, and no matter how many times I said no interviews, no photos, no statements, the looks kept coming like I was some kind of walking front page, and it wasn't like I hated it exactly, but I could feel something shift, like the ground wasn't flat anymore. At the store, Sheila from Produce started leaving a cup of coffee next to my locker just kind of quietly, like we'd been friends for years, which we hadn't. And when I looked up to say thank you, she just nodded. Like I'd earned something I never asked for and maybe never wanted. And that's the part that messed with my head more than anything. A few days later, I caught the tail end of a conversation behind me in the break room, and someone said, "Wait, didn't he used to work over at Crawford's?" And I swear my stomach dropped like they'd pulled a thread from a sweater I thought I'd buried years ago, because, yeah, I did used to work there. But I left for a reason, and it wasn't the kind people like to gossip about. I'd moved to this town. Honestly, I'd picked it because it looked like the kind of place no one asks questions. Just long roads and quiet neighbors, and the kind of winter where people mind their own business. But the second that footage aired, everything changed, and I couldn't walk into Reggie's Deli without someone clapping me on the shoulder like I'd won a medal, but I didn't win anything. I just reacted the way I wish someone had reacted when I was 10, and hiding under a kitchen table while things broke around me and nobody came in to help. So yeah, maybe I did what I did because I couldn't stand watching another kid freeze like that. But that doesn't mean I'm some kind of hero. I started feeling it again, that itch, like someone was watching me, not in a flattering way, but the kind of watching that comes with quiet steps behind you and shadows that feel too still. And I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the old stuff was creeping back in, until I remembered the look one of those guys gave me when I pulled the kid away. It wasn't just shock or fear or anger. It was something else, like a flicker of recognition. And when you've spent a few years trying to scrub your name, Off the wrong lists, you learn what that look means. So I went back through my old texts, the ones I should have deleted years ago but didn't. And there it was buried under junk and old addresses, a name I hadn't seen since the night everything went sideways and I had to disappear. After that, I stopped sleeping, or, well, not really stopped more, like I lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, hearing things that probably weren't there, wondering if this was it, if the past was done, pretending to be the past. I started carrying my keys differently, not in my pocket but in my fist like muscle memory from another lifetime, and it's dumb, I know. But you never forget how it feels to turn the key with one hand and keep the other ready for anything. And last night I opened the old storage box, the one with the papers and burner phone. And that photo I never managed to throw out, and I burned it all, every last bit. Not because I think it'll stop what's coming, but because I wanted to at least feel like I had a choice. You ever do that? Destroy something just to remind yourself it's still yours to destroy? They came to the store around noon. 2 officers, plainclothes, polite, the kind that smile too much like they're trying to make you forget they're armed, and one of them asked if I had a second to talk. Nothing serious. Just procedure, just clearing up a few details from the robbery. And I should have known then that it wasn't about the robbery at all. I didn't make a scene. I'm not that dumb. I just nodded and followed them out through the break room door. And the second we got outside, I could feel it, the change in air. The kind that tells you this conversation is going to end differently than it started. They led me to one of those unmarked cars parked by the loading dock, and one of them opened the back door but didn't say to get in. He just stood there holding it like he knew eventually I would. And yeah, he was right, I did. The guy in the passenger seat turned around slow like he had all the time in the world and said, "You knew him, didn't you? The one who grabbed the kid." And I froze because it wasn't a question. Not really, it was a test, and I failed it just by hesitating. He leaned a little closer and said, "We know, he knew you. He called you by name and not the name you go by now, the name from before." And that's when I felt it. That thing in your stomach that goes hollow. Like a switch flipped, and the floor disappeared. I tried to play dumb, said it must have been a mistake, said people yell things during chaos, but they didn't buy it. They played the audio for me, raw and grainy, but clear enough to hear that name said like a warning. And maybe I flinched. Maybe they saw it. Maybe. I gave away more than I meant to. They let me go, no charges, no threats. Just said we might be in touch and drove off like they already knew they wouldn't have to look for me again. I got home, and there it was, folded and wedged under my door, a piece of paper, torn from some notebook, and in shaky block letters. Just 4 words: "You're showing too much." And I swear my throat closed for a second, like my own body didn't want to swallow what that meant. I sat on the couch, didn't even take off my jacket, just stared at that note until the letters blurred. And all I could think about was that last month before I ran, the way every knock made me jump. How every night I fell asleep with my shoes on, just in case. I really thought I'd disappeared, that I'd done enough to be nobody again, and maybe that was naive. Maybe I forgot what kind of people I used to deal with. People who don't forget even if they pretend to. I tried to shake it off. I really did. Made some tea, cleaned the counter, reorganized the junk drawer, but when I finally went to bed I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made my skin crawl, and at one point there was this engine idling just long enough to not be normal, and when I looked outside, there was nothing, just wet pavement and my own reflection. That's when I knew it was starting again. Whatever I thought I'd left behind wasn't done with me yet, and I didn't want to be caught off guard. So I wrote it all down. Names, places, the whole mess, and sealed it in a Ziploc and stuck it in the freezer under the bag of peas in that old plastic tub labeled chicken soup. Because if anything happens, at least someone will know where to start. Do I think that's paranoid? Yeah, maybe, but maybe paranoid is just what you call someone who's already been right once. It started with the sound, that stupid little ping that means someone tagged you in something. And for a second I thought it was just more local press. Maybe another blurry screenshot or a repost of the article from last week. But when I opened, it was a clip, barely 10 seconds long, but right in the middle of it you could hear my voice, and not the voice I've been practicing all these years. Not the slower, lower version I use now, but my old voice. The one I dropped on purpose, along with the name I swore I'd never hear again. I deleted the post, but it was too late. Someone already DM'd me, a name I hadn't seen in years, just said, "Too loud, brother. We're coming." I stared at that message for so long my screen went dark, and I still couldn't look away, because it meant what I was afraid it meant. that someone from back then had seen it and recognized more than just my face. And if one of them had, then it wasn't going to be long before the others did too. I knew I had maybe 48 hours, tops, before the ones who showed up weren't reporters or cops, and I didn't want to wait around to find out what kind of welcome they'd planned. So I called the only person I ever told everything to, a guy who used to be on the other side of the table, back when I had to answer questions like, "Where were you the night of?" He left the force years ago, said he got tired of gray lines and broken promises, and last I heard he ran a bait shop up north somewhere, but his number still worked. When he picked up, I said just one thing. "They're looking," and he went quiet for a while, then said, "I told you. If you ever showed your face again, they'd react." And that was it. I asked him if he could help, even just a contact or a route out, anything. And he said, "I'll see what I can do." But the line went dead after that, and I haven't heard from him since. That was my sign, I guess. So I packed fast, didn't even turn off the fridge, just left food on the shelves and my laundry half dry, and locked the door from the outside like it would make a difference. Before I left town, I stopped by her place, the woman from the store, the one with the kid. I didn't know what I was going to say, but when she opened the door, I just said, "They might come looking." And she didn't flinch, didn't even ask who I meant, just looked at me like she already knew and said, "Thank you for saving him. Please go." I left the keys in my mailbox, wrote no note, didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't even check my bank account. What would have been the point? And now I'm here, on this rattling bus headed west, staring out the window at towns that don't know me yet. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid for the people I left behind. Is that selfish? Maybe. Or maybe it's just what it means to finally give a damn what you survive. They call suspicious. I changed cities again. Not the first time, probably not the last, and yes, I switched names too. Different DMV photo, different backstory if anyone asked, which honestly, no one really did. That's kind of the trick. If you act like you belong, like you're tired and ordinary and always just 5 minutes late to everything, no one looks twice. But even with all that, even with the new keys and the new mailbox and the new corner store where the clerk doesn't yet call you man like you've known each other for years, I still had that feeling. That weird crawling sense in the back of your neck, like someone's eyes are there even when the room's empty. Maybe it's paranoia, maybe it's memory. I honestly can't tell the difference anymore. I got a night shift cleaning job at this old warehouse by the train yard, the kind where no one cares who you are as long as you show up sober and don't steal. I liked it for that. There was a kind of mercy in not being asked too many questions. I slept during the day, ate mostly toast and gas station noodles, kept the lights off unless absolutely necessary. It wasn't a life, really. But it wasn't the worst thing either. Sometimes I even convinced myself I was in the clear. But you know what's funny? The people who go digging, they're never the ones you expect. It wasn't cops or ex-cons or feds who made the first real dent. It was some bored true crime YouTuber with a blurry thumbnail and 2 million followers who posted a video called, "This Hero Has a Past, and It's Not Pretty." I didn't even want to click, but of course I did. At the 3-minute mark, he shows an old photo. It's not sharp, not even recent, but it's me. And worse, it's me back when I had that name, that face, those people around me. I didn't finish the video. I didn't have to. I knew what came next. I opened my email, an old inbox I hadn't touched in years, and typed out a message. No names, no location, just facts. I laid out everything I remembered from that time. Names, deals, codes, even some of the bad things I did myself. The stuff I never thought I'd put into writing. I hit send. 3 hours later, I got a reply. One line, information confirmed. Temporary protection available in exchange for cooperation. It didn't feel like a win. It felt like giving up the last sliver of distance I had. But if I didn't take it, if I kept running, I knew how that road ended. It didn't end. Quietly, I said yes. I wrote the statement. They gave me a burner phone and instructions for the next place. I left most of my stuff behind. I didn't say goodbye this time either. Now I'm in a temporary unit above an auto repair shop in a town I don't even want to name. There's a curtain over the one window and a deadbolt that sticks if you turn it too fast. Every time I hear footsteps in the hallway, I stop breathing just for a second. Tonight, Someone walked past. Slow. Heavy. Paused by my door. I shut off the light and waited. Just in case. And if you're wondering, no. I don't think I'll ever sleep properly. Again, they wanted a monster. Not a man who changed. The case is still active, technically. There are files being reviewed, people being questioned, dots being connected that probably never should have existed in the first place, and my name is on some of those papers, even if they try to redact it. But it's not safe for me to be out, in public. Not really. Not because I think someone will jump me in the street, though maybe they would, but because nobody agrees on what I am anymore. Some people call me a traitor. Some say I should have stayed hidden. Some call me a criminal in disguise. And the weirdest part? Almost nobody talks about what actually happened. Not about the kid. Not about the fact that someone had a weapon and I stopped him. It's like all of that got swallowed up by the headline. I saw an interview the other night. She was on one of the evening news shows, the kid's mom. And she said something that actually stopped me mid-bite. She said, "He's not perfect, but he saved my son, and that's a fact." And I don't know, something about that hit harder than any threat I've gotten since, because she didn't make excuses, didn't pretend I was something I'm not. She just said what happened. That's it. No spin, no drama, just truth. Online, though, the war keeps going. People like that don't change. He probably set it all up. Once a thug, always a thug. But then someone else will say something like, or maybe he just did the right thing when it counted. And I try not to read it. But of course I do. I tell myself I'm just checking the temperature, seeing what's being said in case anything dangerous pops up. But if I'm honest, and what's the point of lying now? I just want to know if anyone sees me. Not the past. Not the headline. Just me. Out of nowhere, I got a letter. Real paper, real stamp, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting the second I saw it. My brother. We hadn't spoken in years. He never asked where I went. Never tried to reach out. But here it was. 3 pages. Front and back. And, in the middle of all of it was this line. "I knew you saved someone. I would have done the same. Be safe." I cried. Quietly, because there's something about crying when you've lived this long hiding your face that still feels unsafe. But I let myself feel it. I started writing again. Not much. Not a journal, not a manifesto or whatever. Just little scraps of paper, folded up and shoved in drawers. Stuff I remember. Stuff I'm afraid I'll forget. It helps. More than I thought it would. A few nights ago, they mentioned me again on the news. Not by name, just a clip about the investigation, some blurred images, some guesses. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. I actually smiled. Because the story wasn't about what I did wrong. It was about what the others did. And I wasn't the focus anymore. That felt okay. Yesterday, I walked to the corner store in a town where nobody knows me, wearing a hoodie and a hat like always. And I saw a woman drop her bag on the sidewalk. Everything spilled out. Receipts, snacks, keys, the whole mess. I picked up what I could, handed it back to her, and she said, "You a cop or something?" I shook my head and said, "No, just happened to be there." And as I walked away, I thought, I wasn't a hero. I didn't ask for attention. I just did what I couldn't. Not do, maybe that's enough.